Why Venat is polarizing also comes down to the systemic dehumanization of the ancients throughout Endwalker. It was a complete reversal of Shadowbringer's appeal to understanding the ancients as human and relatable. Instead, there was an insistence that they're inhuman and scary based on Yoshida's expectations expressed in a Famitsu interview in March of 2022. This was subsequently used to reinforce the assurance that the sundered version of mankind is superior and deserves to exist more. As I noted earlier, it's the flip side of the Asian argument without a hint of irony. The question of who is more worthy to live in Shadowbringers was presented as a bad one. The Scion's rebuttal to Emet-Selch was the assertion they wanted to live and had a right to continue doing so. The answer to such a premise should be it's the wrong question to ask, but in Endwalker, the response is framed in the terms of dynamis and the plenty. It's dubious because the writers chose to create a scenario in which the only way to save the world was through the extermination of the ancients, who are presented as being beyond salvation and must be eliminated for the greater good. The audience is then encouraged to view it as a necessary evil for the future and growth of mankind, to pave the way for the sundered races, who will be more worthy by contrast. When a story is asking me to be sympathetic to and agree with an action that leads to the mass annihilation of a population, the responsible and ethical thing to do is question and reject it, not accept it. The burden of proof is on the story or its defenders. It doesn't receive a pass because the writers manipulated their cast of characters to try to force that angle. Endwalker played into people's worst impulses, that violence is justified against others due to perceived cultural, societal, moral, and even biological inferiority. It's been disheartening to see how effective this was, especially as it's not difficult to think of real-life historical analogs in terms of the deliberate destruction of a race or culture and using its remnants to build towards something more amiable to those responsible. It's particularly evident when it comes to the aforementioned defense of Venat and the sundering. Statements such as, "she had no choice, it was the only way," and "she tried to reason with them," are cliches when it comes to apologism techniques for committing atrocities. It's possible to justify anything in your own mind if you truly believe it's doom otherwise. This perception is what's led to unmitigated death throughout history. Cookingway, a creation of Heidelin who also believes as she did, blames the victims. However, the ancients did not cause their own downfall. They were not the architects of their own demise. They were sabotaged and assaulted. They didn't deserve what happened to them. That was the tragedy of Shadowbringers, and searching for faults within when they were attacked is appalling. The three unsundered, who bore witness to and survived, who were the only ones qualified to speak on what the sundering did, are frequently dismissed. They had no reason to lie, while the Warrior of Light's relationship with Heidelin from the beginning was based on dishonesty and deceit, which the Watcher even acknowledges before hand-waving it as being anything of importance. The Sundered were only able to overcome the final days because the Ancients took the hit first. They received the assistance, protection, and accumulated knowledge of the remaining Unsundered, all of which had been purposely withheld from the initial victims. The tendency to dehumanize a group of people, to rationalize a lack of empathy or willingness to help them, especially when it's to our own benefit, isn't unfamiliar. Ideologues like Venat, who think in abstract terms where they don't prioritize the harm their ideals cause others, exist both in the real and sundered world.
I do not want to be a man who sacrifices his friends and family for a cause. I want to fight for Estinian, and I want to save him.
The fact the Warrior of Light is still doing side content in Elpis, knowing innocent people are going to be massacred and doing nothing about it, also speaks volumes. There's no sentiment of the Ancients being acknowledged as people who should be saved. They're still to be discarded as necessary fodder. While things could change for them by the end of Pandemonium, it seems unlikely it will be at the impetus of the Warrior of Light, who, as before, will disclose the truth only when pressed, and not due to conscience or creed. As an aside, I have to say Endwalker has done immeasurable damage to my perception of the Warrior of Light as a good person, much less a hero. It becomes particularly uncomfortable when vague generalities are narrowed down into specifics, individual people. The nameless, faceless ancients were doomed to become a dead end. This means your new old friend Hythlodaeus isn't worthy of being saved. He'll selflessly sacrifice himself to save the world, and his reward will be imprisonment within Zodiark for 12,000 years. It means Eric isn't worthy of being saved, and his father, La Habrea, will escape the Sundering only to see his son's soul torn apart and his reincarnations die repeatedly throughout the millennia. It means Themis, who trusts the Warrior of Light implicitly and believes they'd never lead him astray, isn't worthy of being saved, and must sacrifice himself to become the heart of Zodiark, to toil in vain for the sake of his people, and to ultimately give his soul so that the Warrior of Light can return to the past, to apparently continue to not save anyone. Saying these people couldn't or worse shouldn't be saved from what awaits them becomes a staggering claim, and one that is antithetical to the game's messaging up to this point, when the two most repeated quotes throughout the story are to ignore the plight of those one might conceivably save is not wisdom, it is indolence, and for those we can yet save.
We strive to bring swift salvation to this world, that countless lives might be saved, not least your own. Even if it came at the cost of one man, should I have forged on regardless?
While I don't wish to dedicate too much time to Hermes, who has a video of his own, I do feel it's important to note his role in this process. People were hasty to judge the ancients as a whole based on actions that were unexceptional compared to the Sundered or real-life humanity. Fixating on their supposed cruelty ignores they tried to be as kind as possible to their creations, particularly in what was essentially an animal testing facility. The Sundered have significantly less respect for life, routinely treating lesser life forms as tools to be used for their own ends, sometimes for pure entertainment like the Ul'dah Colosseum. The Sharlayans have their own mimicry of the ancient practice of creating familiars, and Alag was ruthless in its experimentation on all manner of life forms. Criticism of the ancients for this behavior is also immediately undermined by the fact the Warrior of Light is happy to accommodate their requests. The compassion displayed in Elpis was more evidence to me the ancients were caring people. Either the writers didn't think this through very well, the premise is coming from an incredibly sheltered place, or both, since real-life humanity breeds and slaughters billions of relatively intelligent beings every year for largely frivolous purposes. The ancients were kind, compassionate, well-meaning people with their own thoughts, struggles, and individuality. Then the narrative and interviews tried to say everything lovable, charming, and indicative of good-hearted people in a peaceful society were meant to be bad, demonstrative of why they had to be eliminated, and the story is dependent upon people reacting to them that way. Similarly, Venat's actions are depicted as worse than I ever thought possible, while simultaneously urging the audience to view her as noble and benevolent. I think people wanted an easy escape from the uncomfortable idea that their predecessors who unjustly died for them were innocent people. The second Endwalker offered that route, many people latched onto it, zealously,